I was 3 people from the register at a Starbucks in downtown Chicago when I saw my fiancé kissing another man. Not in front of me, but in the pastry case's reflection 2 feet away. The hiss of milk cut out. My pulse didn't. I didn't spin around. I shifted an inch, watched his hand slide up her back, watched her smile like I wasn't about to pay for our wedding. For 1 second, I hoped the glass was lying. Then she looked up, eyes flicking past me, and smirked. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. I stepped forward when the barista called my name, lifted a cup I couldn't taste, and walked into the cold. Outside, the city kept moving. I did too. I noted the time. The car, the plate, not anger, evidence. If she wanted to play in plain sight, I'd learn the rules. Because this didn't end in line at Starbucks. It started there for me. I told myself I misread the glass. People lean in all the time. Maybe it was a shadow, a trick of light, anything but what it looked like. I've been engaged long enough to know how a story can spin inside your head when you're tired and running late. I picked up my cup, the cardboard sleeve hot against my palm, and walked out into the Chicago wind. Cold air's a good editor. It cuts the noise. I stared at my reflection in the window and asked the only question that mattered. If I'm wrong, what's the harm in checking? I checked the time, 9:17 a.m. Monday. I've built budgets, fixed leaky sinks, negotiated raises. I can handle the truth, whatever it is. So I wrote it down the way I'd log a repair. Starbucks, 9:17. Blue sedan, dark coat. Claire's hair pinned back. Then I turned the cup in my hand and noticed my name, spelled right for once. That was the last lucky thing that morning. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. I just let the city hum. Streetlights blinked, cyclists cut between cars, and the L rattled like a loose timeline in my head. I replayed the last 6 months in practical frames, late meetings, sudden showers, a new perfume that never sat on our bathroom shelf, the little things you shrug off when you're planning venues and comparing chair rentals. When you're midlife, you give people trust because you don't have time to police every mile. Still, a picture formed. Missed calls stamped 10:42 p.m., a Lyft receipt to River North, a joke she told about awful lobby lighting. I remembered the night she asked me about honeymoon budgets while she hid a smirk in her wine glass. By the time I parked, the latte had cooled, and so had I. Cooling isn't numbness, it's focus. I sat in the quiet garage and wrote 3 lines in my notes, then one more. If I'm right, I need proof. At home, I did the most ordinary thing I could think of. I took out the trash. It steadied me. Older men I respect always say routine is where you earn your calm, so I sorted the recycling, wiped the counter, then opened my laptop like it was any other Monday. Emails, calendar invites, 3 reschedules. I answered them all because keeping your hands busy keeps your mind from blowing up your life too soon. Claire texted a heart emoji around noon. Dinner at home. I typed back, sounds good. My fingers didn't shake. After lunch, I opened my phone's note again and added the plate. IL7 DPK 394. Writing it felt like putting a fire extinguisher under the sink. You hope you never need it, but you'll be glad it's there. When the clock hit 5, I shut down like usual, grabbed my coat, and headed out. On the elevator ride, I made a promise. No accusations without evidence. Tonight, the mask stays on. She was chopping peppers when I walked in, smiling like grocery store commercials. We kissed on the cheek. She asked about my day, and I told a clean version. Deadlines, traffic, the usual wins and losses. Married friends always say you don't go nuclear in the kitchen. It's a rule that saves marriages and, in my case, saves the plan. While pasta boiled, I excused myself to the bathroom and opened a browser. Public records aren't glamorous, but they're honest. I typed the plate number, scrolled, and there it was. Blue 2017 sedan, registered to Brian Callahan. Address in the northern suburbs. I stared at the name like it might blink away. It didn't. I screenshotted the page, airdropped it to my laptop, and returned to the stove. Claire handed me a taste spoon. Need salt? I said. Maybe. Salt fixes bland food, not secret lives. After dinner, she curled beside me on the couch. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The screenshot waited. Sleep didn't come. Memory did. Not the big anniversaries. Those are easy. The small Tuesdays showed up, the ones where she worked late and came home smelling like lobby cologne and rain. I'm at an age where you measure a partner by their patterns. Does the story fit the receipts? I scrolled through months of messages. Her texts read like a brochure for honesty. Tidy, cheerful, nothing sharp. That's how you hide the knife. Around 2 a.m., I found a Lyft ride that didn't match her calendar. Destination, a hotel in River North with a lobby I once called Too Gold for Taste. I saved the receipt. Then I built a folder and named it the most boring thing I could imagine. Insurance. Not revenge. Insurance. Proof against gaslighting. Against that shrug and smile people use when they're already halfway gone. Before dawn, I added one more note. If there's a husband in this, he deserves the truth too. I didn't yet know her name. Morning arrived like it always does. Emails and coffee stains. I shaved, put on a tie, and left the apartment with the same bag I've carried for years. Sometimes the safest place to hide a plan is inside a normal day. At my desk, I opened spreadsheets and let muscle memory take the wheel. Over lunch, I searched Brian Callahan on LinkedIn. Same face from the reflection, stronger jawline in good light. Construction supply company, mid-level, married. If the ring in photos means what it usually means. I wrote the address on a sticky note, the way my dad wrote part numbers in his garage. I looked up the hotel again. Then I closed everything and joined a status meeting because bills don't pay themselves. In the afternoon, I set a silent alert on Find My, the one Claire insisted we keep for safety. Safety is a funny word. By 5 o'clock, I had a plan for the evening. The question was whether I had the nerve. I drove the long way to the hotel, the way that lets you see the front entrance without looking like you're trying. River North is all glass and confidence at night. I parked across the street, cracked the window, and listened to the city exhale. At 7:43, the blue sedan rolled up and idled by the curb. A man got out, tall, familiar, disappeared inside. 2 minutes later, Claire walked through the revolving door with her phone to her ear, laughing at a joke I wasn't in on. I didn't take a picture. Not yet. My father once told me, measure twice, cut once. I waited. At 9:12, they came out together, close but careful. I snapped one photo, then another, nothing dramatic, just enough to prove a direction of travel. When they drove off, I watched the taillights fade and typed a single line, together, hotel, 7:43 to 9:12. The clock on the dash glowed steady. Steady is how I needed to be next. Back home, I opened our shared calendar, the one couples use to plan dentist visits and anniversaries, and cross-checked. Claire had blocked a client dinner at the exact time I watched her leave the hotel. That felt different. Cheating is a choice. Rewriting our shared time felt like theft. I printed the screenshot and slid it into a manila folder. My hands didn't shake, but my heart finally did. When trust breaks past a certain point, you don't get anger, you get clarity. I added the LinkedIn printout, the plate record, the hotel receipt, the 2 photos. A thin case, but a case. Before bed, I stood in the doorway and watched her sleep. I remembered the first apartment we painted together, the jokes about bad tape lines, the way we argued over paint names like they mattered. The past didn't disappear. It just stopped protecting the present. I set an early alarm. Tomorrow wasn't for talking. It was for finding the wife. The townhouse street looked like any other. Trim hedges, kids' bikes, mailboxes leaning with the seasons. I parked 1 block over and walked the last 100 feet with empty hands because honesty shouldn't need props. The doorbell sounded small. When the door opened, the woman who faced me carried the tired grace of someone who works hard and forgives often. "Can I help you?" she asked. "My name is Ethan," I said. "I think your husband is seeing my fiancée." I waited for anger. I got silence, the heavy kind. I held up my phone, 1 photo, then the second. Her eyes watered but didn't spill. She stepped aside and led me to a kitchen that looked like ours. Notes on the fridge, a grocery list, a casserole dish cooling on the stove. "I'm Martha," she said. "Tell me everything." I did, from 9:17 at Starbucks to the hotel door. When I finished, she opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of bank statements. "Your turn," she said. I started simple. The safety feature we both agreed to months ago, Find My. Couples our age use it for practical reasons. Snowstorms, dead phones, peace of mind when someone's driving late. I checked last night's pin against the story she'd told at dinner. The map showed River North, not the office. 2 dots never lie the same way twice. I zoomed in, saw a familiar block, and remembered the time we got caught in traffic there after a Bulls game, laughing at a street performer who couldn't juggle. Little, ordinary memories can feel like they're defending someone you love. But the timestamp didn't flinch. I took a screenshot and saved it with the others. Then I texted her a simple, "How's your morning?" She replied with a coffee emoji and a heart. It's funny how symbols can feel heavier than words. I look back at the map one more time. Same block, same hour. A quiet bell rang in my head. Mismatch confirmed. Once you see a mismatch, you either pretend it never happened or you check twice. I chose twice. After work, I drove the long loop that lets you pass the River North Hotel without circling like a hawk. I kept the radio low and my eyes soft, just another commuter watching lights change. The blue sedan I remembered from Starbucks sat near the valet lane, nose out, like it wanted to leave a clean trail. I parked half a block down, windows up, heat on low. Men my age know how to wait. We've waited on job interviews, lab results, teenagers past curfew. Waiting is a skill. At 7:26, a man stepped out, phone at his ear, posture easy, the kind of confidence you get from thinking no one's looking. He disappeared inside. 10 minutes later, Claire came through the revolving door, laughing at something I didn't hear. I didn't take a picture. Not yet. The night felt like it was listening. I wrote down the time instead. I drove home without touching the camera roll. Discipline is unglamorous, but it's how grown-ups fix things. My dad used to say, measure twice, cut once. And he'd hold the tape with this calm that made me believe wood could tell the truth if you asked kindly. I needed that kind of calm. So I watched the night from my window, the streetlights marking time while Claire texted, running late, be home soon. I answered with a thumbs up and did the dishes I'd been ignoring. Rinsing plates has a way of washing off panic. Back at the table, I opened a blank note and logged everything like it was inventory. Dates, times, places, nothing emotional, all factual. Then I set a simple rule for myself. No confrontations, no speeches, not until I had something undeniable. The older you get, the more you learn the cost of being half right. I went to bed early, fully clothed. If you're going to watch, be ready to see. Patterns don't prove themselves in one pass. They ask for a second look. The next evening, the city wore the same coat, glass glowing, sidewalks busy. A steady hum of people who don't know your life is closing in. I parked farther back, behind a delivery truck, and watched the entrance. At 7:41, the blue sedan idled again, exhaust curling like a signature. Claire slipped inside 3 minutes later, head down, coat open, the kind of casual that's rehearsed. This time, I waited longer. You don't photograph the door, you photograph the return. At 9:18, they came out together, a little closer than before. The space between them filled with a confidence I recognized from my own good days. I lifted the phone, set the exposure, and took 2 clean frames. No drama, no zoom, just enough context to anchor the truth. When the valet opened the sedan's door, Brian glanced left, right, then laughed at something she said. Click. The first photo sat in my hand, solid. Photos without a system just become ghosts in your camera roll. I'm the kind of man who labels storage bins and keeps spare batteries in a plastic case. So I stopped by a big box store and bought a small external drive, the kind you forget in a drawer until you really need it. At home, I created a parent folder named something so dull it would never catch interest, utilities. Inside it, I added receipts. Then, one layer deeper, insurance. Evidence should look boring. I dropped in the Starbucks note, the plate record, the Find My screenshots, and the 2 hotel photos. I added dates to the file names because dates are the bones of any story. Then I wrote a short summary in a text file, like you'd write instructions for a new homeowner. Who, what, when, where. Before bed, I backed the drive up to a cloud account Claire didn't use. Organization isn't revenge, it's dignity. The folder felt heavier than its size. The next clue didn't come from hacking or passwords. It came from convenience. We keep an older iPad on the kitchen shelf for recipes and sports scores. Claire had logged into her mail there years ago, and sometimes the app chimed by accident. While she showered, it pinged. The subject line froze me. Next time, B. I tapped it with a carpenter's touch, slow and steady. The message was short, almost careless. It mentioned a lobby I knew too well, and a joke about stepping closer he didn't even notice. I read it twice, then once more to be sure I wasn't reading my own fear into it. The initials matched the registration. The tone matched the smirk I'd seen in glass. I took screenshots, then signed the iPad out of mail like a man wiping crumbs off a counter. When Claire came back in, she asked if I wanted tea. I said yes. Truth goes down easier when your hands are warm. Evidence has a different weight when it speaks. Seeing is strong. Reading a person's tone is stronger. He didn't notice us. That sentence walked around my kitchen like it paid rent. It wasn't guilt or apology. It was mischief. Two conspirators patting each other on the back. In your 30s, 40s, 50s, you've heard real remorse. This was not that. I saved the screenshots to the drive and printed them, because paper still matters when hands shake. I thought about the couples we know, the ones who made it through layoffs and parents' surgeries by telling the truth even when it hurt. Then I pictured the pastry case's reflection again and understood the performance was intentional. If they wanted me blind, they'd have been careful. They wanted me nearby. They wanted the laugh. I slid the printouts into the folder behind the photos. One line of text had done what 2 nights of parking couldn't. It put motive on the table. Once motive enters the room, the story changes shape. This wasn't just desire in the wrong place. It was a game. 2 people counting on me to doubt my eyes and swallow my pride. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet bet that you'll keep the peace for appearances, that a man with a mortgage and a wedding deposit won't risk a scene. I poured coffee and remembered a supervisor from years ago who pushed small, wrong things to see who would speak up. The lesson then was simple. Calm beats cocky. Records beat gossip. I opened my notes and wrote a new header. Not an accident. Under it, I listed the tells, public risk, the email tone, the timing. Then I added a line that stiffened my spine. Do not be rushed. People win power games by making you sprint. I wasn't going to sprint. I was going to stage the truth so it could stand on its own feet. I needed rules, not rage. Midlife teaches you that standards protect you when emotions try to run the show. I wrote 3 on a yellow pad. 1. No accusations without a record. 2. No private fireworks. Public clarity only when it protects the innocent from more lies. 3. Keep working, keep eating, keep sleeping. Because neglecting your life is how betrayal wins twice. I called my father on the pretense of asking about a home repair and listened to his voice steady me. He once told me, "You don't have to match someone's bad behavior to beat it." I added that as Rule 4. Then I rehearsed out loud the sentence I'd use if I ever needed it. I have something you need to see. Not, you hurt me. Not, how could you? Just the doorway into truth. When I capped the pen, I felt older in the best way. Like a man who finally knows where the lines are on his own map. By the time the sun went down, I knew what I was doing and why. This wasn't about punishing 2 people who thought they were smarter than me. It was about not living a counterfeit life. I've seen friends stay for the wrong reasons. Kids, houses, the fear of starting over at 50. I respect those burdens, but I also know the cost of pretending. I opened the folder one more time and read the dates like a timeline for a documentary. Starbucks, 9:17, Hotel, 7:41 and 9:18. Email. Next time, B. Message. He didn't notice us. The story held. I whispered a vow I could keep. I won't shout. I'll show. There's a dignity in proof that no apology can manufacture. I closed the laptop, put the drive in my coat pocket, and washed the coffee mug in the sink. When I turned off the kitchen light, the apartment looked the same as always. It wouldn't for long. The plan had a pulse now. County records don't care about feelings, they care about facts. I typed Brian Callahan into the clerk's site and waded through the spinning wheel every midlifer knows too well. The file popped. Address in Northbrook, property tax history, and the line that stiffened my spine. Married to Martha Callahan. I wrote the address on a sticky note the way my dad wrote socket sizes on masking tape. Marriage changes the compass. Betrayal stops being private misbehavior and becomes a network of lies. I stared at the map, followed the green ribbon of the Edens in my head, and pictured the townhouse row. Trimmed shrubs, shared walls, porch lights that click on at dusk. If there was a wife, there was a witness. I closed the browser, slid the sticky note into my wallet, and checked the time. The impulse was to drive right then. I made coffee instead. Rushing is how you miss the doorbell camera. Tomorrow, in daylight, I'd knock and use my real name. I drove out near dusk, the hour when families decide between leftovers and takeout. Northbrook looked like reliability, minivans, chalk on sidewalks, a neighbor rolling trash cans to the curb. I parked a block away, walked slow, and counted addresses until I saw the second-floor lamp glow in their unit. You can tell a lot from a window. Warm light means people who still try. Darkness at dinner means someone eating in the car. I memorized the mailbox cluster, the path, the tiny crack in the step. This wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. I didn't knock. Not yet. I needed to choose the version of me that would show up at her door. Not the angry fiancé, not the humiliated man, but the neighbor a person can hear. On the drive back, I passed a Little League field and remembered coaching a season for my nephew. The way kids look to you for calm when the ball takes a bad hop. Tomorrow, I'd be the coach. Morning gives courage. I wore a plain jacket, left my phone on silent, and carried nothing but the truth. The doorbell sounded like a question. When the door swung open, a woman my age looked back at me with the practiced politeness you learn after a few hard years. "Martha, can I help you?" "My name is Ethan," I said. "I think your husband is seeing my fiancée." She didn't slam the door. She studied my face the way a nurse studies a chart, searching for vital signs. "Why do you think that?" I held up my phone and showed her 2 photos and a screenshot of the plate record. Her fingers twitched, then steadied. "Come in," she said. Inside smelled like coffee and last night's casserole. Family photos lined the hall. Holidays, a lake, a porch swing. She led me to the table and sat without drama. "Show me everything," she said. When I finished, she closed her eyes and whispered, "I've felt this for months." The kitchen table is where grown-ups do surgery. She slid a spiral notebook toward me, the kind you buy on sale in August, and opened a drawer that held every charger known to man. "I keep lists," she said. "I lose my nerve if I don't write things down." She flipped to a page labeled Odd Charges, restaurants she hadn't visited, cash withdrawals on nights she watched a movie alone. I recognized one date, my hotel photo matching a $110 dinner for 2. The coincidence wasn't a coincidence. She covered her mouth, not to hide tears, but to hold in a sound. "I'm not angry yet," she said. "I'm embarrassed I tried so hard to believe him." I told her belief is not foolishness. It's a promise we keep until we can't. We sat across from each other like jurors reading the same verdict. Then she took a breath, uncapped a pen, and wrote 3 words at the top of a new page. Timeline of truth. We built it like a home repair. Measure, mark, cut straight. My note for Starbucks, 9:17. Her bank charge at 9:52 for that same strip of downtown. My hotel photos at 9:18 one night. Her Lyft receipt at 9:23. Same block. She drew a line down the center of the page, his on the left, hers on the right, then connected moments with arrows, lines crisscrossed like a power grid. When you're 30, 40, 50 plus, you learn to respect grids. They either light your house or burn it down. At 7:41 p.m., our pens met on the same dot. She looked up and nodded once, not to me, but to the facts. "We're not guessing anymore," she said. It was the strangest relief I've ever felt, like finding the leak exactly where you feared it was. She stood, opened a cabinet, and set down a manila folder. "This is yours," she said. Inside were printed statements and screenshots. The truth had office supplies now. Allies need rules. Betrayal breeds chaos. Rules give you a floor to stand on. We agreed on 5. 1. No ambush texting, no drunk messages, no midnight gotchas. 2. No social media, screenshots stay private until they matter. Isfight. 3. Protect work. We still have to pay bills. 4. No unplanned confrontations. We only move when we can show the truth, not argue it. 5. Kindness to ourselves. Eat, sleep, walk. She added a 6th. No blaming each other for believing too long. That one softened the room. We exchanged numbers under boring names. Mine became plumber, hers library, because sometimes the safest plan is the most ordinary. Before I left, I asked if she was sure. She nodded. I won't be the last to know in my own house. On the porch, the air had that clean bite you get before spring. I saved her contact, pocketed the folder, and felt the first real steadiness since Starbucks. We weren't alone anymore. That changes math. We didn't become friends. We became reliable. Each evening, one of us sent a single update. A timestamp, a location, a receipt. No color commentary. Adults don't need color when the numbers already have teeth. She noted ATM withdrawals that didn't match their routine. I noted calendar blocks that didn't match Claire's commute. We made a shared spreadsheet and named it something no one would open. Budget draft. and filled columns with times and places. The funny thing about getting older is how systems save you when feelings try to drown you. Midweek, Martha texted, "He's covering for a coworker tonight." My alert pinged in River North. 2 stories ran parallel, then overlapped, then became one. At 9:05, I drove the long block again and saw the blue sedan under the same streetlight. I didn't take a picture. I didn't need to. The photo already existed, on paper, in ink, in numbers that matched. I slept 4 hours straight. That was a win. Trust deepens on hard asks. Martha called, voice steady like a nurse giving instructions. "If you see them together, can you capture a video, not just a photo?" I said yes, even though video feels heavier. You can't pretend motion didn't happen. That night, I set my phone to no flash, 60 frames, and parked where a delivery van shielded me. At 8:37, Claire and Brian exited the hotel laughing. The kind of laugh you hear at backyard parties when someone tells a story you weren't invited to. I filmed 5 seconds, enough to show faces, hands, distance. Then I lowered the phone because dignity matters on both sides of a wound. At home, I labeled the file door 837pm.mov and dropped it into insurance. Martha texted a single word, "Received." Sometimes the smallest acknowledgments carry the most weight. I poured water, turned off the lamp, and sat in the dark until my eyes adjusted. Confirmation doesn't heal. It does, however, steady your aim. Evidence burns hot at first, then it hardens like steel. The next morning, I woke with that steel in my chest and a list in my head. I printed thumbnails of the video frames and added them to the folder behind the bank statements. I left out anything that could be misread as pettiness. No captions, just dates, times, places. At lunch, Martha called from her car. "He laughed when I asked about the cash," she said. "Said he was covering tabs for the team." We sat in silence together, that middle-aged silence that says, "We've both heard better lies." Then she added, "Tonight he's meeting an old friend." My phone buzzed an hour later. Claire blocked strategy session on our calendar. Strategy has a new definition now. I walked after work, a long loop past the lake, and practiced breathing like a doctor taught me once. Most plans fail from panic, not lack of evidence. Ours had both breath and proof. By Friday, the folder felt like a living thing. I could hear its heartbeat when I slid it into my briefcase. Photo, screenshot, statement, video. I sat at the kitchen table and asked myself what men my age ask when something breaks. Repair, replace, or reveal. Repair requires confession. I didn't have one. Replace is a word for appliances, not vows. That left reveal, but reveal with care, not spectacle. My phone lit up with a text from Claire. "Thinking family dinner soon, before the big day." I stared at the words, then at the remote on the credenza we almost never use. Family dinner. A room of witnesses who love the truth even when it hurt. I typed back, "Great idea." Then I added a line you'd only send if you were sure. "Let's invite coworkers too. The more the merrier." She replied with a smiley. I set the phone down, opened the folder, and whispered, "All right." The plan had a venue. Now it needed timing. The next morning, Martha texted a photo of her bank app, 2 dinners at a steakhouse we'd both driven past 100 times, the kind of place where you order sides a la carte and regret it later. The timestamp sat right on top of Claire's overtime blocks. Married life teaches you that money keeps a cleaner diary than people do. I drove to work in a quiet that felt useful, replaying small jokes Claire had made about client dinners and bad lighting. I forwarded the screenshots to our insurance folder and added a note. Menu matches lobby scent. It sounds silly, but smells stick. That restaurant shares a vent with the hotel bar. Later, Martha called from her car, Bluetooth crackling, wipers ticking. "He said the charges were for team meals." I heard the pause older adults use when they're done being naive. "Team of 2, I asked. She didn't laugh. "Let's keep going," she said. We didn't need hope anymore. We needed weight. Scrolling through Claire's feed, I found a photo of her laughing under a mural in River North, the same wall where she and I once stood eating takeout from paper boats, arguing about which band deserved the top spot on a road trip playlist. Back then, she wore my jacket for a joke. In the new picture, I saw a sleeve that wasn't mine, and a reflection in a window that wasn't an accident. Betrayal hurts, but repetition insults. I saved the image and wrote a single line under it. Same spot. New story. Midlife gives you a good memory for landmarks, restaurants that close, barbershops that switch owners, the mile marker where you decided to stop running. This landmark had a before and an after now. I added the photo to insurance and labeled it by location, not emotion. When Martha called that night, I described the mural. She exhaled like a pilot sticking a landing. "I know it," she said. "He hates that parking meter." We both did the math. Paper has a way of calming a room. I bought a cheap accordion folder, something you'd store tax returns in, and turned our digital pile into printed pages. Dates across the top, captions small, nothing dramatic. I sorted like I was prepping a will. Find my screenshots, plate lookup, hotel receipts, bank charges, the mural photo. Then I added a table of contents, because order makes courage easier to find. Martha did the same on her end. We named our folders the same boring name, Evidence. Older friends taught me that an organized drawer won't save your marriage, but it might save your sanity. I lined the documents on the dining table and imagined a skeptical uncle, a judgy cousin, anybody who might ask, "Are you sure?" I could already hear the answer in my head. The last page was blank. I left it that way on purpose. Blank pages invite next steps. Before bed, I slid the folder into a cabinet we never use and locked it. The next crack came from something careless. Martha had been folding laundry when she found a second phone in the back of a desk drawer. Older model, cheap case, the kind you buy at a gas station when you don't want questions. She called me from the hallway, whispering like the walls kept diaries. "Do I look?" she asked. In a different life, we'd say no. In this life, we said yes. She powered it on and read the first messages while I sat in my parked car outside our building, keys still in the ignition, times, places, coy little nicknames, photos with the corners of my furniture in frame. "He saved everything," she said. Cheaters like trophies, I thought, even when the trophy is shame. She sent me screenshots that landed in our folder like stones on a dock. Then she paused. "There's more," she whispered. Her breathing tightened through the speaker. "You should see this one." I braced without knowing how. She tapped the next thread. "I've heard apologies. This wasn't one." In the burner's thread, Claire had typed a sentence that clicked like a handcuff. "Once I'm set, it's just you and me." Set. Not healed. Not honest. Set. Like money in the bank. A new lease. A timetable. I read it twice and felt my age in a good way. When you're 30, 40, 50, you learn the difference between a mistake and a plan. This was a plan. I pictured my saved invoices for the florist, the deposits on venues, the spreadsheet we argued over like it was a game. "I'm the bridge," I said out loud in an empty car. "She's crossing me to get somewhere else." Martha didn't speak for a long breath. When she did, it was quiet steel. "He's not worth your bridge," she said. I printed the message and filed it behind the mural photo. In the top margin, I wrote one word I hadn't allowed myself yet: motive. The case didn't wobble anymore. It stood. Once motive shows up, you stop chasing shadows and start drawing lines. I pulled out a legal pad and wrote a headline at the top: "From affair to scheme." Under it, I listed the points any adult with a mortgage would understand: financial dependency, timeline overlap, public risk for the thrill of getting away with it. This wasn't a fling that tripped. It was a parallel track. I added a final column titled Exit. If Claire was planning to jump, she'd want a soft landing. Someone else's savings, someone else's guest room, someone else's weekends. The recognition hurt less than I expected. Clarity can be kind. I called Martha and read her the list. She added one more line, the kind that only a wife would think to write. Damage control pattern. He jokes when cornered. We both underlined it. Then I looked at our evidence and realized we were past amateur hour. "We need a professional," I said. "Not a friend with a camera. A witness. Older adults save for rainy days. This was a storm." I reached out to a licensed private investigator, a colleague recommended after his own bad season. A woman who spoke like a contractor and billed like one too. No drama, just scope and deliverables. We met in a small office that smelled like toner and peppermint. I laid out the folder. Martha joined by video, her face set like a coach before kickoff. The PI listened without flinching, asked clean questions, then slid a one-page agreement across the desk. "You need clear visuals of comings and goings, and you need clean audio if possible," she said. "No hotel rooms, lobbies, sidewalks, cars, places where privacy isn't expected. Adult rules, not movie rules. We signed. She scheduled 3 nights, plus a floating day, for luck, and told us to manage our nerves the way we manage deadlines: sleep, water, routine. As I left, she said something my father would have liked. Emotion makes fog. Evidence turns on lights. Waiting is a job. The PI texted updates like weather alerts: neutral, time-stamped, proof ready. While she worked, I worked. I folded laundry, replaced a broken hinge, paid the water bill, and sat through a meeting where a younger coworker acted like he invented email. Normal isn't a disguise, it's ballast. Martha did the same. Early bedtimes, no questions that might tip the house. We didn't share guesses, only confirmations. On the second night, the PI sent a short clip: Claire and Brian entering the hotel together from opposite sides of the sidewalk, then leaving together 90 minutes later, talking with the loose confidence of people who believe in their invisibility. No skin, no scandal, just proximity and timestamps. "This is good," the PI wrote. "We need audio to seal intent." Martha texted me a thumbs up. I stared at the screen a long time, then turned it face down. I didn't need to watch twice. The clip had already rewired the room. Audio changes everything. On night 3, the PI set a directional mic from a legal vantage point near the parking lot where the blue sedan liked to idle. She warned us it might be wind and tire noise. It wasn't. The file she sent sounded like a confession draped in laughter. Claire's voice clear, Brian's lower, both of them speaking with the practiced cruelty of people auditioning for a life they hadn't earned. "He's clueless," Claire said, a smile you could hear. "He pays for everything." The PI clipped the sentence and added the time, 9:06 p.m. I played it once and stopped. You don't need echoes when the first strike lands. Martha called without hello, breath tight. "That's my husband," she said, not past tense. Present. We let the silence do the work grown-ups let it do. Hold the weight. Make room for the next step. I slid the printed transcript behind the bank statements. The folder didn't just have pictures now. It had voices. By the end of the week, the folder was a machine. Photos, receipts, maps, video, audio. It didn't need me to argue for it. It spoke. When evidence reaches that tipping point, your body knows. I slept through the night for the first time since Starbucks. In the morning, Claire suggested a casual family dinner. To celebrate the countdown, I watched her set out plates like nothing had teeth. The PI had delivered what we needed. The rest was choreography. I texted Martha, "Dinner next Saturday. Everyone." She replied with a single word, "Ready." I backed up every file to 2 places, an external drive labeled utilities and a cloud folder no one else could reach. Then I rehearsed one line in the bathroom mirror, the way a man practices a eulogy. "I have something to show you." Not rage, not theater, just an invitation to see. The case was closed. The plan opened like a stage curtain. All that remained was to press play. Martha and I sat shoulder to shoulder at her kitchen table, the evidence folder open like a toolbox. We didn't whisper. We breathed. Grown-ups know the difference between venting and building. We read the transcripts once more. The hotel timestamps, the burner messages, the sentence that called me a wallet. When we finished, she poured coffee, and I stared at the steam, the way you stare at a road before merging. "We're not doing kitchen fights," I said. "We're doing clarity." She nodded, tapping the folder's spine like a gavel. We listed risks on a pad, shouting matches, denial, blame, the scramble to seize the narrative. Then we wrote the counter, witnesses, dates, video, audio. My father's voice came back to me. "If it's true, it can stand." I underlined that twice. We didn't want revenge. We wanted daylight. We closed the folder in agreement, and the room felt less like sorrow and more like a workshop. The decision settled like hardware. We'd show, not argue. You don't pick a battlefield, you pick a stage. We needed a place where truth wouldn't get dismissed as heated words or bad timing. 2 days later, Claire floated the idea herself. A family dinner, casual, before the wedding sprint. She said it in that cheerful voice people use when they're stacking chairs on a wobble. "Everyone together," she smiled. The plan chose its own venue. I texted Martha, "Dinner next Saturday, our place." She replied, "Copy." We sketched the guest list on legal paper: parents, siblings, 2 cousins who never miss a free meal. Then we added a column called witnesses, not enemies, not an audience. people who know our faces. I told Claire I'd handle the TV hookup for a slideshow. Middle age means you're always 5 minutes from a slideshow. She laughed and kissed my cheek, already placing napkins in her head. I said yes to everything, menu, music, timing, because she was building a room I intended to light up. Planning for truth looks a lot like planning a backyard movie night. We made a list. HDMI cables, spare batteries, USB with clips, laptop with clean desktop, TV tested at 1080p. Then we wrote another list labeled guardrails. No alcohol for us until after. No scenes in hallways. No locked doors. No one alone with Brian. We mapped the seating so the screen was visible and remotes were within reach. Martha offered to bring her laptop. I'd keep the remote. I practiced the input switch like a pilot rehearsing a landing. HDMI 2. Volume 18, subtitles on for clarity. We printed 2 small transcripts in 18-point font, one for each of us because hands shake when adrenaline hits and large type rescues you. Before leaving, Martha added one more guardrail. Safe exit plan. If the room turned ugly, we'd leave together, folder in hand, truth intact. The gear went into a tote. The guardrails went into muscle memory. The night now had rails, clips convince faster than speeches. I spent Wednesday night at my desk trimming the PI's footage into a 3-minute reel. Entry, exit, car, kiss in public, then the audio. Claire's voice steady and smug. He pays for everything before I jump off. No hotel rooms, nothing explicit, just the kind of proximity that speaks for itself. I added simple on-screen captions with dates and times, a quiet clock in the corner like a heartbeat. For the final frame, I faded to the burner text. Once I'm set, it's just you and me. Not bold, not red, just plain type that lands like a hammer when you've seen the rest. I watched it twice at normal volume, once with sound off. The truth held 3 ways. Then I exported to 2 USBs labeled utilities, not expose, not proof. I dropped one in Martha's tote and hid the other behind board games. I pressed play one more time and felt my jaw unclench. The reel worked. Midlife teaches you this. Things fail at the worst moment. So I built redundancy. I uploaded the full folder to a cloud drive with a boring name and printed a 1-page index mapping each clip to a timestamp. I tested the TV again, then a spare monitor, then my phone with a dongle because dongles are how modern plans survive. I even checked the wall outlet, no loose plate, no flicker, then ran the reel at 18 volume to be sure neighbors wouldn't hear before they should. For safety, I saved the audio file separately and made a second, even shorter cut that opens on her line. He's clueless. Martha texted mid-afternoon. I labeled the laptop recipes. We both smiled at that. Before bed, I put the remote in my jacket pocket and a spare in the kitchen drawer. You don't get do-overs with moments like this. You get preparation or you get noise. I wanted the click of certainty, not the hiss of panic. Claire sent out the group text with oyster enthusiasm. Saturday, 7 p.m. Casual, come hungry. She added a smiley I used to love. RSVP bubbles popped from parents, a brother who always brings craft beer, her cousin who narrates everything. I looked at those names and felt the ache older adults know. Innocence about to meet evidence. I cleaned the apartment like company was the point. Fresh towels, candles we never light. That scratch on the dining table buffed with olive oil like my mother taught me. I set the plates, then sat down and rehearsed 3 simple lines. Thanks for coming. I have something to show you. And please let the video play. Not accusations, not adjectives. People trust calm more than volume. Claire floated through the rooms humming, holding up napkins for my opinion. I said, they're great, and meant it. The ordinary deserved one last perfect pass. Then I tucked the USB under a coaster and breathed. Saturday had eyes now. Saturday morning arrived polite. Blue sky, errand weather. I went for a short walk and passed a garage sale where a dad taught his kid to make change. It reminded me that grown-up life is mostly small transactions of trust. Back home, I tested the setup again, then placed the evidence folder where I could reach it without breaking eye contact. Martha texted, running late on purpose, 15 minutes, smart. Arriving a beat after Brian would keep her entrance from tipping the room. I ironed a shirt I almost never wear and shaved carefully, the way you do before a job interview or a funeral. At lunch, Claire asked if I could handle the music. I cued a playlist of safe classics, Bill Withers, Van Morrison, songs that won't compete with a freight train. At 6:30, I set the TV to a nature scene with the sound down low. It looked like Serenity. It was staging. I put the remote in my pocket and closed my hand. At 7 sharp, the bell rang. Parents first, coats and hugs, the familiar check-in questions. Work okay? Traffic bad? How's the car running? Then Claire's cousin, talking before her shoes were off. I poured drinks and kept my voice even. Brian arrived at 7:12, a practiced smile, a bottle of wine he likely didn't buy. Claire announced him as a coworker who's helped so much, and my stomach registered that as a foreign object. I set one extra chair near the wall like a stagehand. At 7:27, Martha stepped in, breath steady, casserole warm in her hands, eyes level. She greeted our parents as if she were a neighbor, dropping off dessert after a bake sale. Brian's jaw tightened, then relaxed. Muscle memory for men who lie for sport. Claire's eyebrows flickered, then smoothed. I checked the clock over the stove. 7:30. 40 minutes to dessert. 40 minutes to daylight. I topped off waters, cracked a joke about taxes, and watched the room settle into place. You can feel a room's wiring if you've lived long enough. This one hummed with forks and small talk and the creak of chairs older than some of the guests. I slipped into the kitchen, pulled the remote from my pocket, and pressed the input button just enough to wake the HDMI port. No picture yet, just a black screen the TV could jump to in one click. Martha stood beside the counter stirring nothing, her casserole already done. "You good?" she asked without moving her lips. I nodded and placed a folded napkin over the USB as if it were a ring. Claire tapped her glass. "Quick toast later?" And I said, "Perfect." The playlist rolled into Ain't No Sunshine, which felt on the nose, so I skipped ahead. Her father told a story about his first job at a hardware store. My dad laughed in the right places. The comfort was real, so was the countdown. Dessert plates waited on the sideboard like stage props. Dessert landed, pie, coffee, that old-world clink of spoons on ceramic. Claire stood, glass in hand, cheeks bright, voice smooth. "Family," she said, "and a few friends who feel like family." Applause, the soft kind. She tossed me a smile. "Ethan, cue the slideshow." My hand was already on the remote. One click. The nature scene vanished. The first clip filled the screen. Hotel entrance. Timestamp clean as a paycheck. Conversations died. I didn't explain. I didn't narrate. I let time do the talking. Second clip. Exit. Shoulders touching. Laughter you could see. Someone's fork hit a plate. Then the audio rolled. Not loud, just clear. Her voice. "He pays for everything." "Before I jump off." No one breathed. Claire's face went hollow. Brian reached for his coat and stopped. Martha set down her casserole with the calm of a verdict. "That's my husband," she said, to the room, to the truth. The TV light painted everyone the same color. We were in it now. Silence is louder than shouting. The clip played, then the audio line hit like a dropped pan. "He pays for everything before I jump off." Nobody moved. You could hear the refrigerator cycle. Claire's smile fell off her face like it was on a hook. My mother covered her mouth. Her father gripped the table the way men hold a ladder when someone's still on it. I kept my eyes on the screen. "Please," I said, steady. "Let it play." The next timestamp rolled. Entry, exit, the same hotel, different nights. I didn't narrate. Proof doesn't need adjectives. Brian stared at the rug as if it might open. Martha stepped forward, voice even. "That's my husband." The word husband changed the temperature in the room. Claire reached for the remote. I set my hand on it without looking at her. "We're not debating," I said. "We're watching." The clip ended on the text from the burner. "Once I'm set, it's just you and me." The room exhaled, verdict pending. Claire tried first. The kind voice, the soft spin older adults know too well. "That's out of context. We were joking. He's just a coworker. You know how office politics are." She talked in wide circles, hoping we'd get dizzy. I picked up the evidence folder like a mechanic reaches for a torque wrench. "Context is here," I said, laying out the printouts. "Find my pins, bank charges, the mural photo, the plate record, dates, times, receipts." Her cousin started to say something about misunderstandings. Martha set down a single statement with a yellow highlighter slash. "Same night as that clip," she said. "Dinner for two." Claire's eyes did the math and found the same answer I did. She reached for my arm. I stepped back 1 inch, the polite distance you give a stranger. "Please," she whispered, "we can talk." "We are talking," I said, tapping the timestamps. "This is my voice tonight." I hit play again. The audio repeated. The room didn't blink. Brian stood, the universal sign for "I'm out." He grabbed his coat with a little flourish men practice when they want to look in control. Martha didn't raise her voice. She set a manila folder on the table and slid it toward him like a bill. "Sit," she said, "or I email your boss the burner messages and the hotel video." He froze, shoulders forward, chin tilted, the posture of a man calculating new math. Older folks in the room recognized it. We've all seen someone meet consequences late. He sat. Claire looked at him for rescue, and he stared at the salt shaker instead. My father's voice was calm but heavy. "Is any of this untrue?" he asked. Brian's mouth opened, then closed. He looked like a fish that had finally noticed the water. I cued the tight cut, 20 seconds of entry-exit, then the line. "He's clueless." No one shouted. That's the thing about a well-lit truth. The exits stop working. The first questions weren't clever. They were human. Her mother. "Why?" My mother. "How long?" Claire's dad. "With our money in the room." Each answer Claire tried dissolved when the next clip rolled. I kept my voice low, the way you talk to a friend on a porch after a funeral. "No one here is your enemy," I said, "but we are witnesses." Claire reached for an old picture. Vacations, smiles, all the bright Saturdays we built. "We had plans," she said. "We had a date." "We had a budget," I answered, "and a promise." I picked up the burner printout and read the words said out loud. "That isn't confusion," I said. "That's a schedule." In middle age, you learn to separate accident from design. This was design. Claire's shoulders dropped. She stopped performing. For a beat, I saw the woman I proposed to, and then I saw the woman in the clip. I turned to the table. "I'm not asking for advice," I said. "I'm stating." I stood, not to loom, but to steady. "I'm ending the engagement," I said, clear enough to land in the back row. No drama, no insults, just the closure you give yourself when you run out of bridges. I reached into my pocket, pulled off the ring I'd been carrying like a debt, and set it on the table between the dessert plates. Zoitsi. The small sound it made traveled farther than any speech. Claire's breath hitched. Brian reached again for his coat and thought better of it. Martha gathered her folder like a clerk closing a file. My father put a hand on my shoulder. "Good man," he said. Not loud, just enough. I turned to Claire. "You didn't trip," I told her. "You built this." Then I faced the room. "Thank you for letting the video play." I clicked the TV dark. The after image glowed on the screen for a second, like a ghost of what used to be. The verdict didn't echo. It stood. Claire started to cry, the small, hiccuping kind that used to break my resolve. It didn't now. Her mother stared at the linen like it had offended her. Her father's jaw worked the way men grind their teeth when they want to punch drywall, but were raised better. My mom folded a napkin into a tight square, her tell when she's holding back a speech. Brian tried a half smile and found no takers. Martha didn't flinch. She slid her folder back into her tote, then set both palms on the table like a referee. "Sit down," she told Brian, and he did, the word landing like a bench whistle. People our age know this feeling, when a family gathering turns into a hearing, and everyone's old stories suddenly feel expensive. Claire whispered, "Please, not like this." I answered once, even, almost gentle. "This is the only way we all stop guessing." I picked up the ring, not to keep it, but to move it aside. The room accepted the verdict. After the first shock, the practical machine kicked in. Parents asked about deposits, leases, the crisscross of accounts we'd knotted together like extension cords. I had answers, receipts, dates, a plan to unwind without lighting anything on fire. Middle age trains you for boring heroics. Cancel, call, confirm. Claire tried to bargain with memory. Vacations, pet names, the time my back went out and she tied my shoes. I let the memories stand and the math stand beside them. Martha handed Brian a typed list of next steps. Lawyer, keys, a time to pick up a box with supervision. He signed like a man at the DMV. When the families began to leave, they hugged me the way people hug widowers. Tight, careful, resigned. Claire reached for my sleeve. I stepped back one pace and shook my head. It wasn't cruel. It was accurate. I walked them to the door, thanked them for coming, and meant it. The hallway felt colder, but it also felt clear. When the door closed, the apartment sounded like a seashell, empty, echoing, honest. Claire stood in the living room, mascara trailing, and said, "We can fix this." I remembered every fix I've ever done. The faucet that only needed a washer, the wall that hid a rotten stud. Some things are repairs, some are rebuilds, some are teardowns. I kept my voice level, the way a contractor explains scope. "You didn't trip into this," I told her. "You built it." She covered her face and sank into a chair. I put the ring in its box, set it beside the folder, and gathered my overnight bag from the hall, packed days ago before I admitted it to myself. At the door, I paused, not for drama, but for inventory. Wallet, keys, drive. "You'll hear from me about sorting the rest," I said. No threats, no promises, just process. I stepped into the quiet corridor, pulled the door gently shut, and felt the lock catch. The line held. The hallway felt like a runway, quiet, lit, waiting for a decision already made. I lifted the overnight bag I'd packed days ago, the way you lift a truth you can finally carry. The elevator hummed, doors slid open, and for the first time in months, I didn't rehearse a speech. I texted Martha 2 words, "I'm out." Her reply came fast. "Me too." The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and relief. Outside, Chicago met me with late traffic and the steady hush of the river. I walked without rushing, past a couple arguing softly about takeout, past a cabbie singing an old song, ordinary lives going on like they're supposed to. I called my dad, left a simple message, "I'm okay." Then I opened my calendar and deleted the wedding blocks one by one, like shutting off a water main before the leak ruins the house. I stopped under a streetlight and let the cold finish its work. Tonight wasn't revenge, I said out loud. It was revelation. I kept walking. The night didn't close behind me. It opened. 2 months later, the house is quiet in the right ways. The invitations are canceled, the deposits untangled, the ring boxed and stored like a tool I no longer need. Claire lives in the ripple of her choices. No wedding, no chorus of friends, a reputation that finally met the truth. Brian tried to laugh it off at work. The laughter dried up. Martha signed papers with a steady hand and started fresh. New locks, new calendar, the kind of clean that doesn't smell like bleach. It smells like air. I moved across town and learned small rituals again. Making coffee for one, walking at dusk, sleeping without checking the door twice. Some mornings I pass a storefront window and still see it. The first reflection. It didn't just show betrayal. It showed me a rule worth keeping. Seeing hurts, but blindness kills. So I'll keep the lights on. I'll choose exposure over silence, dignity over drama. If you choose truth over silence, you live free. Your move.